What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today let's get started with Michael Chandler saying he's the perfect guy to welcome Conor McGregor back to the Octagon. You've got to give it to Michael Chandler. The guy knows how to make his case and stated clearly for the world to hear. With Conor McGregor looking to get back into the Octagon sometime later this year after nearly a year off due to a broken leg injury, Chandler is giving us several reasons why he would be the perfect fight for the Irishman. Chandler is a former Bellator lightweight champion, and since he's moved to the UFC in 2021, he's been thrown several top 5 contenders right out of the gate. He finished Dan Hooker in the first round, but then lost 2 straight to the champion Charles Oliveira, and then dropped a decision in a war against #1 contender Justin Gaethje. Both of those guys are now fighting for the title in the next pay-per-view, so it's no shame losing to those guys. Chandler at the moment is set to take on Tony Ferguson on May 7th. But he's still keen on taking on Conor, and for good reason. The Notorious One is the biggest name in the sport, and he makes the big bucks for the promotion, himself, and his opponent, no matter who he fights. Even lightweight champion Charles Oliveira stated he'd rather fight McGregor because of the top dollar involved in that fight. Well, Chandler believes that if McGregor wants a title fight, he's the perfect guy to go through. Case in point, this is what Michael Chandler stated in a recent interview with MMA Fighting.
I think I'm a great guy for Conor. If he comes back and he doesn't get the title shot, he's going to have to go through somebody to get that title shot. So I think I'm kind of that perfect guy right there, ranked about number 5, where he could come in. If he gets a win over me, he definitely gets the title shot. So, we'll see.
Do you agree with Michael Chandler here, and that this fight makes the most sense for Conor? Also, do you think Chandler could beat McGregor if this does take place? Who do you have your money on in this hypothetical matchup? After Robert Whittaker pulls out of UFC 275, Paulo Costa calls for a rematch against Marvin Vettori. Robert Whittaker has had to withdraw from his scheduled bout against Marvin Vettori at UFC 275 in Singapore. Bobby Knuckles stated in an Instagram post that he suffered an undisclosed injury and will be unable to compete in the highly anticipated middleweight clash in June. This leaves the Italian without an opponent for UFC 275. And while it's unclear what the UFC will do with Vettori for this card, here comes Paulo Costa to offer his services for a rematch. Costa and Vettori fought last October to headline a fight night event. The lead up to that bout was a mess, with Costa missing weight and the UFC having to scramble to finally get both sides to agree on a catch weight of 205 pounds. Vettori ultimately beat Costa by a unanimous decision, but the fact that both fought already did little to smooth over any animosity. If anything, the fight only made them bigger rivals, as both sides continuously badmouthed each other even after the fight. Costa called for a rematch not long after that bout, which Vettori scoffed at. Even after the bout, UFC President Dana White himself stated that Costa would most likely have to move up in weight, given how difficult it was for the Brazilian to make 185 pounds the last time out. But now, with Whittaker out of his scheduled bout against Vettori, Costa sees an opportunity to get one loss back, and he took to Twitter to issue the challenge. Vettori needs a pair to fight? Oh really? LOL, how funny is it? Send me the location, dumbest. Then Costa tweeted out a photo of Vettori with a caption that read, "Let's fight, moron, LOL." What do you think about this call out? Do you want to see this rematch take place? Do you believe the UFC would be interested in setting this up? Do you think Costa could make 185 pounds? And who do you think would win this fight if it were to go ahead? Nate Diaz blasts UFC over 420 sale of NFTs. Nate Diaz is pointing out the hypocrisy when it comes to marijuana and MMA fighters. His brother Nick Diaz was suspended for 5 years for having THC in his system, while Nate Diaz says he was fined for having a vape pen during his post-fight press conference back in 2016 after his loss to Conor McGregor. But now in 2022, the UFC is suddenly using marijuana culture to sell NFTs with the likeness of the Diaz brothers. The UFC promoted a sale of their new 209 NFT pack that shows some of the Diaz brothers' top moments in the Octagon. The sale took place on 420, the marijuana holiday known throughout the smoking world. This is how Nate Diaz responded to that idea, by tweeting out a photo of the promotion with the caption that read, "It's like this why I need to get the out of the sorry UFC. Didn't you guys suspend Nick for 5 years and fine me hella money for a vape pen? Now you're reaping the benefits. I hope nobody buys this bullshit." It's important to note that the Nevada State Athletic Commission suspended Nick Diaz for 5 years, not the UFC. although they do have to follow the commission's rulings by law. This comes at a time that Nate Diaz has also been trying to extricate himself from the UFC, most likely to retire from the sport altogether, so he says. There was talk of a potential fight against Dustin Poirier for Nate's last fight on his current deal, but that has not materialized. At last report, Diaz has publicly requested a release from the promotion, but UFC President Dana White has stated there's always a chance to make the Conor McGregor-Nate Diaz trilogy fight a reality if both sides can come to an agreement. Either way, do you agree with Nate Diaz's comments here regarding the UFC's NFT sale on 420? Don't forget to take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to the MMA Zone to stay up to date on the latest fight news. Khamzat Chimaev is the real deal, but will not beat Kamaru Usman, says Matt Brown. The immortal Matt Brown was a terror in the welterweight division and was one of the top contenders at 170 pounds several years ago, so he knows a thing or two about winning in that division and how top tier of an athlete you must be to reign supreme at 170 pounds. One thing we learned in a recent interview between Brown and MMA Fighting is that he's clearly impressed with Khamzat Chimaev. The Chechen Swede has been making a lot of noise since he defeated two fighters in his first UFC fights just 10 days apart in two different weight classes in the summer of 2020. Since then, Chimaev has only added to his hype, defeating the likes of Gerald Meerschaert by one-punch knockout, Li Jingliang by a second-round finish, and defeating one of the best fighters at 170 pounds in Gilbert Burns by a unanimous decision, who was ranked number 2 at the time they met just a few weeks ago at UFC 273. But while Brown saw a lot to like about Khamzat at UFC 273, he also believes Borz needs to work on a few things before he can get past welterweight champion Kamaru Usman in any potential fight in the future. Case in point, during the interview, this is what Brown stated.
But you know what? To be honest, I didn't see anything in that fight that showed me he's going to beat Usman, though. You know, that was the only negative that I would have took out of that fight. Of course, you know, MMA math never works, you know, but the way that he beat Gilbert didn't make me think he's going to beat Usman.
Brown goes on to say that he gives credit to Khamzat for stepping up his game and taking on much higher competition than he's used to in Burns. Of course, Burns was always going to give him trouble simply because the Brazilian is an incredible fighter with world-class grappling skills. It was Khamzat's toughest test to date, and while he did win a decision, Khamzat himself believed he could have done better. After the fight, he stated that he gave his coaches a hard time by not following the game plan and choosing to brawl with Burns instead. Brown also stated that Khamzat has time to shore up the holes in his game that Usman would exploit, and that his next matchup will be vital in doing so. What do you make of Matt Brown's comments regarding Khamzat fighting Usman? And do you agree with him? A recent video obtained by TMZ and posted online shows Mike Tyson throwing a barrage of punches to a passenger behind him on an airplane who was annoying him and clearly instigating a reaction from Iron Mike. The video shows some person sitting behind Iron Mike seen repeatedly bothering the 55-year-old retired boxer. Then later on in the 1-minute clip, Tyson is seen punching the man several times before he exits the plane, leaving the man in a bloody mess. The flight was from San Francisco to Florida, and at the time of this broadcast, no charges have been filed. This is how some in the MMA world reacted. Big Ben Rothwell tweeted out, "World needs more Mike Tyson." And finally, Kelvin Gastelum tweeted, "Drunk, annoying, and rude. Please don't be like this, guys. I've been around Mike, and he's an extremely calm person these days. This guy must have really brought it out of him." What's your reaction to watching the video and what Mike Tyson did? Let us know down in the comments. Jorge Masvidal says he has a hard time seeing Paddy the Baddy as champion. Jorge Masvidal's recent appearance on Logan Paul's Impulsive podcast was an interesting listen, as the boys asked Gamebred all kinds of questions to which we've been curious to know the answers. While they stay pretty clear of the physical altercation that took place outside a Miami Beach restaurant between Kobe and Masvidal on account of the legal action involving Masvidal and the charges he's facing stemming from that incident, the Peruvian Cuban was pretty candid about a lot of things, including his feelings after losing to Colby at UFC 272. But while Logan Paul recently talked about his plans to eventually transition into MMA and called out a certain Englishman for his debut fight, Masvidal shared his thoughts on it. Logan had stated a few weeks ago he would want to fight Paddy Pimblett for his first ever MMA fight, on account of the fact that it would be a highly entertaining promotional lead-up for the fans and would generate tons of revenue. At the same time, Logan Paul says that because Paddy, who fights at 155, balloons up in between his fights, the two could meet at a catch weight of 185 pounds. Anyway, Masvidal was asked about what he thinks of Paddy as a fighter, and Gamebred gave an honest answer. This is what he stated.
From the skill, I think he's entertaining. I think he's wild, but from the skill set right now, I don't see him being a world champion. But that could change, right? But his skill set right now, I don't think it's at the top where it should be right now,
Paddy the Baddy has only fought twice in the UFC, but both were first round finishes via TKO last September in his debut, and then again by submission against Kazula Vargas last month at UFC London. Later on, Masvidal stated he believes Logan Paul actually has a shot to beat Paddy the Baddy, mostly due to the fact that Logan was a one-time NCAA Division I wrestler and has gone in there with legendary boxer Floyd Mayweather, so he's no slouch. He believes that Logan could take down Paddy if he can catch him. Still, what are your thoughts on Masvidal's comments regarding Paddy and his skill set? Thanks so much for joining us today. What do you make of what's going on in the fight world? Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on all the latest news from the MMA Zone. See you next time.